I'm very pleased to introduce my friend and certainly a friend of the Parker Center for Family Business, Dr. Robert DelCampo. Lynn and I first met Rob when he was the Associate Dean at the Anderson School of Management, when the Parker Center became affiliated with the Anderson School of Management. Rob was certainly enthusiastic about our affiliation and was very supportive in our transition. Rob is now the Executive Director of UNM's Innovation Academy at UNM, and we're going to have him tell us a little bit about the Innovation Academy. He holds a Rutledge Endowed Professorship in Management, as well as serving as a Bill Daniels Business Ethics Fellow. New Mexico Business Weekly named Rob to its 40 Under 40 top list of young professionals and was listed by Albuquerque, New Mexico, the magazine, as 15 people who will change Albuquerque. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. DelCampo.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit about generational dynamics, but hey, got a room full of people, might as well plug my product while I'm here, right? Which is the UNM Innovation Academy, which is approximately 2.5 years old and is a meta-curricular opportunity for students across the curricular boundaries. So you could be a major in biology, you could be a dance major, you could be an engineering major, to get interested in innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And from a family business perspective, it's a great opportunity because, I don't know, maybe you have a family business that you wanted to pass on to your kids. They decided not to get a business education, but you kind of hoped they'd infuse some of those entrepreneurial ideas into their learning. That's what we're here to do. We were set a goal of having 45 students sign up by this time, which is in our 3rd year. As of this morning, we have 732 students. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They represent 85 different majors at the university. And to date, students out of our program have started 14 businesses and that are up and running currently. So we're very excited, and it's really for everyone. We're housed in the new Lobo Rainforest building downtown, 101 Broadway. Come see us. There's spaces available for students to live upstairs. We've got some cool things going on there. But still, you know, Anderson is my home at UNM. I have a degree from Anderson, my MBA, before I left and did a Ph.D. and came back as a faculty member, and I've been a member of the faculty at Anderson for about 14 years. I came a couple of years ago and talked about millennials and generational dynamics to this group, and I guess it went okay because I get to come back. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that material, but I also want to talk about this new generation, and we got a few of them that I can identify by sight in the room here, but Generation Z and some of the differences that they bring out and some of the issues that we might be facing with this group. A lot of folks like to just complain about these young kids and such, but I think it's really important to understand where and why we have some of these interactional issues, some of the popular cultural influences, and how those things really shape the way that people think and work together. So let's just look really quickly here at the generations in today's workforce. And currently, we have 4 generations in the workforce, verging on having 5 generations in the workforce. Pointing to times, you know, older times, past times, we usually only have 3 generations that are of working age at a time. But now with advances in technology and medicine and such, we have the opportunity for people who are a little more seasoned to stay in the workforce, but also opportunities for younger people to participate. So who do we have? So first we have the silent generation folks, born about 1925, 1945, Depression era folks. These are people who are nearing the end of their career or are retooling for more of an avocation or returning to do something, maybe because they have to, who knows. And I like to refer to these folks as the CEOs or Walmart greeters of the world, right? So they're going to be doing one of those 2 things pretty much. The second group and largest group in today's environment are the baby boomers, 46 to 64. They're really shaped by the salient events in their lives, which are the Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King assassination, moon landing, Vietnam War. And counter to the silent generation credo of paying your dues and working hard, they really are a little bit more materialistic, you might say, right? And interested in flashing and identifying material success. Okay? Largest group in today's workforce, but not for too long. The next group, which is the best group, not because I'm a member of it, but actually that's why, are Generation Xers. And if you think about Generation X, it's a relatively small group. It is marked by institutionalized childcare, by dual-income families really becoming the norm in this particular group, and really changing the way that families interact and work in business. The generation that we like to complain about a lot, the millennials, right, are the folks that actually are now leaving college. So they're not folks that I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis anymore, but really are the new infusion into the workforce and really will be the new power group for us as we move forward. There are about 80 million millennials who will be entering the workforce, and they're going to be taking the jobs of these silent generation and baby boomer folks as they phase out. They really have this credo of wanting to make the world a better place, but we're really shaped by things like the internet and 9/11, and the fact that you have everything you could possibly want at your fingertips. When I was in school, which doesn't seem that long ago, but it's getting longer and longer, we had to go to the library, we had to get those big red reader's guide books and look up topics, and then you'd go to the card catalog, and then you'd find where the things were and photocopy it, and then actually read, right, and identify things. Now it's just Google, bloop, doom, done. I got a paper from a student, don't get any ideas, students in here, with one citation on their paper last time they turned it in. And the citation was www.google.com. That's it. Works cited, Google. Very clever, but not exactly what we're going for in an educational context. So we'll talk a little bit about millennials, and then I want to go into this new generation of Gen Z, because what's interesting about social phenomena, particularly when you look at generational dynamics, is how things kind of evolve. And what tends to happen is that if people are on one end of a pendulum and they operate this way, think about this in terms of the Depression era type folks, right? You know, conserve, be very frugal, don't spend a lot of money, reuse your Ziploc bags or something. I always remembered that from my grandparents. Social phenomena don't tend to go from that level back to sort of the normal swing of what you would expect. Yeah, hey, this Ziploc bag is pretty clean. I can reuse it. That's reasonable. They swing all the way in the opposite direction. And so this is noted over several different types of social phenomena, but people swing all the way to the opposite extreme. So people that were very conservative and very frugal, the next generation will swing to the opposite end and be a little bit more boastful. They will be a little bit more free spending, etc. Another place you see this is when you look at language of origin, right? People say, oh, well, my parents never spoke Spanish in front of us because, they wanted us to be American, that sort of thing, right? They didn't want anybody to discriminate against us. What happens in the next generation? Go back the other way and say, we're going to learn Spanish, and you're going to learn it before you're 5 years old, and it's super important, right? Rather than a place where you say, hey, it's important to know multiple languages, etc. So we see this in a lot of areas. So who are millennials? A unique age cohort, which is the first 20 to 23 years of life. That's where people really kind of form who they are, about 80 million folks. And they're people approximately born between 1980 and 1993. So again, this is the new crop of folks entering the workforce. Why is it important? Because 60% of employers cite tension attributed to the concept of generation of birth. It is not something that's taboo. If I said, who's Protestant, who's Catholic, who's Jewish, who's agnostic, and we lined them up here, you guys would start to have a heart attack, and we'd have the newspaper knocking at the door, right? But if I said, who's over 60, go over here, who's 40 to 60, stand right here, who's 20 to 40, stand right here, you're going to say, yeah, those are the people who don't know what they're doing, 20 to 40. They got to come talk to us. We can stereotype, and we can make assumptions about people based on age, and it's okay, and sometimes even encouraged, right? So it's a very important dynamic that we need to get a hold of. But 40% of today's workforce is going to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. And many of you may be in that boat and are very much looking forward to it. They're the people who have a plan and are very happy and smiling right now because they know that they have opportunity to get out. So somebody's going to have to replace these folks, and it's going to be millennials and it's going to be Gen Z, and they have a different approach to work than we've had in the past. Over 70% of older employees are dismissive of millennial abilities, right? We assume that millennials and Gen Z folks don't know anything, or they have these newfangled approaches, sending their text messages and their, Snapchat and all that kind of stuff, right? We don't tend to embrace these types of approaches, when in reality, it's something that could be incredibly valuable. But we also need to remember that slight age differences can still equal large interpersonal differences. So just because I put a category up here and I say 80 to 93 millennial, 94 plus Gen Z, and here's the characteristics, these are sort of rolling averages of what these people kind of look like and how they approach life. Just because you're in a category doesn't mean you're like that, okay? Many of you folks are going to say, well, I'm, a silent generation person and I use just as much technology as, my grandchildren and that sort of thing. That's fine. We have to remember that these are very nuanced. So, millennials are generally regarded in today's workplace as pretty much the worst people on earth with no work ethic whatsoever, right? They're more concerned with their social media posts than they are with upward mobility, okay? And there is some reality to these statements that this is the first group to really grow up with Facebook posts, tweets, Snapchat, all of these things where, got to take a selfie at the Parker Center for Family Business Luncheon because everyone's super interested that I know, right? But this is part of the culture. And in fact, millennials have been identified because now we have a pretty good corpus of knowledge around how they approach life as the most narcissistic generation of all time. And in fact, there's a study in 2006 that backs that up and shows us that millennials are the most narcissistic people on record. So just fire them all, right? Now, the reality is that people like to cite that and they like to talk a lot of smack about millennials, but as people age, right, they become less narcissistic. So children, babies inherently are narcissists. They have no choice, right? They can't do anything for themselves. But as they get older, they become more and more selfless. Now, my hypothesis is that there's a certain age where you kind of go over the cliff and go back to being more of a narcissist, but that's for another time. But this is a group that lacks interest in the traditional news media, but they don't feel cheated by society like Gen X, right? They feel that they're here to serve a purpose and do something. They take longer in school. They're more cautious in making decisions. In fact, only 37% graduate college in 4 years. These are the folks that take, 6 to 9 credits of PE every year. And, trying to get that GPA up. Oh, took two sections of basketball. Gotta, do what I can. I see them. But under the guise of being more cautious in making decisions. But this is really nurtured by parents who are saying things like, I didn't have the opportunity to take time in school and do those sorts of things. So I want that for my kids. Again, that social phenomena pendulum, you swing all the way to the other side. I had to get through school really quick. I only had 4 years. I didn't have a chance to explore these things. So I really want to nurture that in my kids, okay? So it's actually the parents' fault. So I'll blame it on you guys. So what does this create when we see these folks come into the work world? Well, I call it the gold collar syndrome, and we create people called the boomerang kids. Because after they've taken 6, 8, 10 years to graduate with those 110 credits of non-professional PE classes, it's time for them to come home and live with mom. Because they deserve a break. I mean, that's a lot of hard work. Lifting those weights and those yoga classes really can be taxing on the soul. So we see this phenomenon happen quite a bit. After college, millennials tend to move home with their parents and take somewhat advantage of that situation as they do their job search, right? And when they're looking for a job, they're not looking for a blue-collar job or a white-collar job. I call it a gold-collar job, because the type of job doesn't matter. The expectations are the same. I should jump in and make a difference immediately. I don't throw trash. I don't make copies. I don't get coffee, right? These are very typical things that we see. And sometimes these are the sort of paying your dues types of activities that we hope that folks are going to do at their early stages in their career. But it's really a function of how we've raised these folks and things like Barney the Purple Dinosaur and participation trophies and gold stars that, hey, I'm special, damn it. My parents have been telling me for years, I'm special, okay? And when Barney's singing to me, I feel special. And I'm a leader. That's another one. I'm special, I'm a leader, and I deserve a trophy, okay? It's your fault. So we have a terrible group of people here, right? No. Not bad, just different. But people think that they're going to have to change when they enter the workforce. Now, I hope through your time working in your family business and thinking about this and doing succession planning, you realize that being stagnant is a lot of times a death sentence, right? Particularly in family business, we see this idea that the new generation coming up is going to have to, get in line, do the same thing, be very similar. But being dynamic and innovative is really the key to that, right? So workplaces that are nimble, like family business, can be more welcoming to younger generations. There's not all these corporate layers, to work through in order to make changes. So organizations are going to need to adapt to younger workers, particularly based on the numbers. So making your organization millennial ready is great, not only in terms of succession planning for your family, but also in terms of recruiting people to come work for you. So turnover is a huge issue and an area I do some research in. And when you look at turnover versus performance, the people that tend to leave organizations are the high performers, right? Because they have opportunity to leave, right? If you're good at your job, you're going to have lots of places to go work. And the low performers, right? Because they get managed out, we'll call it, right? Or fired, or whatever that may be. But theoretically, and this is back in the ivory tower of academia, people who work in organizations for any period of time would be mediocre in that middle area, unless there's something else linking them to the organization, right? We call this links to the organization. We call it embeddedness as well. So what's keeping a person at work? Is that it's a family business and we got to keep it going? Is it my spouse has a job in the area, my kids are in school, I have good benefits, I'm a couple years from retirement? Those are the things that draw people in, particularly the high performers. And these are the kinds of things that millennials and soon Gen Z workers are going to be looking for. Okay? It's really just good management practices that can overcome any of these generational issues that we might have. It all goes back to being a positive manager, to having good HR practices, to just doing the right thing. But we tend to forget about this. And we get all worked up into, oh, we've got these kids that are checking their phone 53 times a day. They're going to come work for us. But really, the tried and true management practices work pretty well. So why is this group so different? Why are millennials so different? Well, parental influence and participation. Many of you that are parents and have children in college, I receive phone calls from you about how they are performing. There's a lot of it. MTV, the internet, the fact that they're told that they're special, constant immediate feedback, the overemphasis of constructive criticism, right? Sometimes it just needs to be criticism. So what do we do? Again, it has to do with recruiting and retention with these folks, right? It's an important group that we need to capitalize on, and they want to be special, so why don't we make them feel special? But it's not about making them feel more special than anybody else. It's, again, being a good manager, being a good owner, and being a good CEO of your group, right? Doing what is the right thing to do by your employees. So things like mentoring programs or compressed work weeks are different things that may seem totally foreign to your organization, but maybe they're things that you can make work, so you can level the playing field somewhat. The other thing we do is sell culture in addition to pay and benefits, right? Companies like Google and Southwest Airlines, if I see another student do a presentation on Google or Southwest Airlines, I'm going to punch him in the face because that's all I hear, right? Oh, you can take your dog to work. Oh, they do free dry cleaning. Oh, you know, the CEO flies on the plane all the time and likes to do shots of whiskey. Right? These are the kinds of things that I hear all the time. But culture is so big, right? And when you have such influence over the culture, particularly in a family business, that's really where you can do some of this sales work that's really important. Rethinking career path structures, so important in succession planning, identifying how things will progress, but not just from the typical place of, here's the job I have and here are the requirements, but turning the job description inside out and saying, here's the job I have, and here's what you're going to get out of it. Okay, if you work for me for 3 to 5 years, you're going to get this training. You're going to have these opportunities. Here's the different positions you might have the opportunity to move up into, right? Very successful. When I was at Arizona State working on my Ph.D., a lot of our students would go get jobs at Xerox, and they would take below market wages to go work for Xerox in their management training program. What would happen is it'd be 2 years, and then when they were done with that 2 years, they pretty much could write their ticket as to who they wanted to go work for. But what happened after that 2 years? They signed back up with Xerox because Xerox was investing in them as a person and giving them that attention to say, hey, I trust in you and you're going to do a great job. So that's the millennials. And as I mentioned to you at the beginning, social phenomena tend to swing all the way back to the other side. So with Gen Z, which are the people born in 1994 up to today, which are the kids who are in college now, looking for internships, pretty soon will be graduating, right? These are the folks we call Gen Z. Gen Z is an interesting group, and we're just now finding out about them. And we sort of erroneously group them with millennials sometimes. But they're very unique and very risk-averse, okay? Very self-reliant, and many of them are not seeking the same level of education as previous generations. We're seeing declines in college enrollment, and we're seeing increases in vocational training, right? Goes with the risk aversion of this particular group. So who are they? Many of us, unless we have kids, don't really know, okay? In their daily life, they want everything, everywhere, and immediately, right? No waiting. You ask a question, they say, let me Google it. Boom, right there, okay? Their idols are internet stars like, does anybody here know who PewDiePie is? One person, right? YouTube stars. They're not watching TV. They watch YouTube channels. They stream everything. They listen to K-pop. Anyone familiar with that? Korean pop? Not even in English. This is huge. It's amazing to me, right? Trends come from social media, and they believe that the morals of their elders are out of date, right? That morality is important, but that the way that it is framed by the existing society is passé. What else? They're friends. It's easier to talk online than in person. Which, sure, absolutely. If I was a teenager now and I was dating, I would much rather text someone or send them an email to ask them out than have to call them and talk to their dad on the phone, you know. Think about how terrifying that was, right, as a kid. So much easier. Hey, you want to go out? Boom, right? Over 50% believe that their real social life happens on social networking sites. That their friends on Facebook are really their friends. And dating websites exist for ages as young as 16, right? So that can be scary, that can be terrifying, or maybe it's just a shift in the way that we interact. So how do we regulate these things? I mean, there's a big story today about regulating ads on Facebook, right? And obviously any business doesn't want to have their industry regulated. I mean, that's if you can get away from it, right? That's the best thing for you. But things are changing, right? The advertisements that were showing up, right? They were concerned about who's funding these things and how does that work, but freedom of information and, all those sorts of things. Things are changing dramatically. So what they know. Now, what's very positive about these folks, but is also scary, is that they're the ultimate self-educators. If I go to my undergraduate students and I say, how do you change a tire, right? Maybe 2 or 3 of them will know how to do that. But I'll say, who could go change my tire right now? They would probably all raise their hand. And I would say, how would you do it? And they'd say, well, I go to YouTube and I'd find a video on how to change a tire, and I'd watch it, and then I go change your tire. Self-reliant, okay? Entrepreneurial, for sure. But sometimes things in reality are a little more difficult than they look on the internet. But they learn what they know. We just bought a couple of 3D printers for our place downtown for students to do some rapid prototyping and such. And I know how to use them. So I went to one of our students who works for us, and he's like, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. Tomorrow, I'll be able to do this. And he did. Now he's like, now I got to figure out how to print these parts for my dirt bike and that kind of stuff. That's great, right? He's teaching himself. Now, the problem is that these folks don't know what they don't know. They can educate themselves on certain little pieces of information, or learn how to pass this level of a video game, or how to change a tire, or how to print on a 3D printer. But what about the bigger picture of critical thinking, or of putting these things together into some sort of package that makes you marketable, or that makes you be able to push your business to the next level? That's the part that's somewhat concerning. And that's part of the reason we think that enrollments in higher education are coming down a bit, is that these folks figure, if I need to know something, I'll find out on my own. Right? They spend 3 hours a day in front of a screen. They live in constant FOMO, which means fear of missing out. Okay? And they take multitasking to a new art. These are the folks who watch TV, surf the internet, and text their friends at the same time. And as a result, have shorter attention spans. Attention spans peak at, do you know what age attention spans peak at? Anybody know? 5 years old. Okay. So everyone here, except a couple people over here, are well past their prime. Okay. So at work and the future, okay, 50 to 72%, so this is from a couple different studies here, of Gen Z folks want to run their own startup. They view corporate America and the structures that exist within it as something that is passé. They want to start their own thing, they want to do their own thing, and have direct input over it. Startup culture is huge. I mean, obviously part of my job is to help promote that, so maybe it's my fault, but it is such in the front of the minds of Gen Z folks, to the point where some people call Gen Z the founders, right? Because they want to be founders of their company, the centennials, those sorts of things. The idea of business brings negative responses. They view it as brutal and complicated and trying to fit themselves and their uniqueness into a mold that wasn't built for them. They believe success comes from their network rather than their qualifications. And they see a bleak future, particularly in the economy and in the environment. Hence, leading them to the safe choices in terms of employment. Trade enrollment, associate's degrees, other certifications like HVAC. If you look at the numbers from C&M, even here, they're starting to be off the roof, through the roof. People are signing up for these things tremendously because they offer safe, quick paths to a solid level of earning. Now, certainly it can get you to $50,000 a year very quickly, but once you hit that level, you're pretty much capped out. The one thing we know about economic development is that education is the path to higher wages, right? That's the one thing that's been proven time over time. So why do we care? Well, in 2017, it's estimated that Gen Z alone in the US will spend $44 billion. Okay? There are 2 billion of these people globally, and they're going to spend $10 trillion in their lifetime. What are they spending money on? Now, they're all 23 and younger, but what do they spend money on? Look at this. We've got 42% they're spending on hobbies of their money, of that $44 billion. 21% on video games, okay? And 18% on food, okay? Those trends were not mirrored by millennials 20 years ago. We didn't see these numbers. Video games were not 21% of spending. It wasn't there. It's completely different and completely shifted in terms of who we are serving. So this is a terrible group of people, right? Well, of course, no. Not bad, just different again, right? They check their phones 43 times a day. 52% of them would rather converse via text. 58% want full control over how they engage with service providers, and 97% trust anonymous online reviews. It's scary, but it's an opportunity as well. This doesn't mean these numbers are going to change, but it's important to understand the landscape and the snapshot you get of these folks in order to be able to help shape behavior. So what we see in terms of generational dynamics in the workplace is that people whose generations are close to each other have a lot of friction, but people who are further away in terms of generations have higher levels of respect and understanding. So as likely mostly baby boomers in the room, rather than having the strife between baby boomers and Gen X and somewhat with the millennials, with Gen Z, we're actually seeing some pretty harmonious relationships and the opportunity to really learn things and to interact. So we have a responsibility to get these things working together. Very quickly on educational attainment, and you probably can't see this very well. We're basically just saying here that your median income goes up as you attain more education, except for that doctoral degree, so that was not a good plan on my part. But in general, we know that that's an economic development strategy. But what we're seeing is declining enrollment at that bachelor's degree level. It's not happening anymore. So what we're seeing now is that most people are capping out at this associate's degree or some college and no degree. So the norm is changing. So how do we adapt? How do we work with Gen Z? Just a couple of quick tips. We offload the transactional, right? Personal interaction, relationship building is incredibly important. They really want to focus on experiential learning. They want to choose their own adventure. And we want to speak their language. We want to know a few things about them. Again, nothing we don't know. But we're dismissive sometimes and don't think it's important. Getting to know people, getting to know a couple of things about what they might like or might be interested in. Those are solid management strategies. The lean startup concept, if you know anything about it, is incredibly important. But really what it is just a retooling of the basic scientific method. You start doing this in first grade, okay? Observation, hypothesis, test, conclusion, go back. Same thing with lean startup. Observe a problem, talk to people about it, try to solve it, test, go back. It's more complex than that, but I'm making it very easy. Not being as rigid as we tend to have been in the past, particularly with this group. They want to make a difference. They want to have a solid income stream. They likely would love to work in family business if they understood the dynamics that it really is their very own startup to work in. Right? It all started as a startup at some point. That these opportunities and these highly effective opportunities are something that can be cooperative for them. So it's a cooperative group that's interested in making sound decisions. Wow, what a shock, right? That has innovative approaches to things, that really wants to work with you. So again, good management practices never go out of style. If we can keep that in the front of our minds, things like generational dynamics, gender dynamics, race ethnicity dynamics can really be minimized. Being a good boss, being a great employer, and treating your people well is really the key. Okay? So that's all I got. Maybe I have time for like one or two quick questions. Yes, Linda.
The statistics you're showing, is that just the United States or is that globally?
These statistics right here That's the only place I put in global statistics, the 2 billion with the Gen Z folks. Everything else is US based. So we have 80 million millennials in the US, and Gen Z is going to spend $44 billion in the US this year. Mm-hmm. Yes?
You mentioned 50 to 72% want to pursue their own entrepreneurial adventures and start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Do they take it to the next level of what that means in terms of hiring employees and how to manage that?
Do they take it to the next level in terms of hiring employees and managing that? Not yet, right? Because these folks, the oldest of Gen Z is only 23. So we have maybe 3 or 4 successful businesses in the US started by 23-year-olds and younger. But that's what's scary. They do self-education in those areas, right? So what they're going to do, I need to hire someone, I need to learn about HR and the law. I'm going to train myself. Where's a free online course? Where's a YouTube video? Where's that sort of thing? So it's helping shape that landscape for them and understanding that they don't know what they don't know kind of concept is what's a little bit scary. It's exciting that they want to do their own thing and start businesses, and that's great for the economy, right? But do they know enough to do that? They might know enough to invent a cool tchotchke, but that might be about it. Maybe one more question. Anybody?
How do you get them to be critically analyze the information that comes from the internet, truth versus not?
How do you get them to critically analyze information that comes from the internet? I really wish I knew. But it's a good question. I think that that's a cultural thing that we're going to really have to push in not only popular culture channels, but also in our families. I mean, it's a new thing we're going to have to start talking about, right? I mean, we talk about internet security, and we tell people, my son is in 2nd grade, and he comes home with this, don't believe everything you read on the internet, and that kind of stuff. But it's not as ingrained in our culture as I think it needs to be. And even today, they're talking about regulating ads on Facebook, right? That's the first step. And I hate to point to government to do all of this stuff, but I think it's an important portion of it. So, yeah, John. What's with all the tattoos? So, I don't have stats on Gen Z, but millennials, 48% of all millennials have some form of body modification, which is a piercing or a visible tattoo. So it's more the norm than not, okay? But again, it's being special, right? I'm unique, I'm special, look at me. Right? So you think, I can't have these people with tattoos and piercings. Well, it's 48% of your market. So, thank you guys for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them a little bit later. But
Some people are more successful. We're getting more successful. I am. We're graduating next term. It happened. I like this. It's kind of like,
Just because Jim mentioned it, I am going to mention it. But I've started 6 months ago. So about 9 months ago, my wife was appointed to the legislature, representing our district. We live in Magdalena, so I put a few miles on. But she 3 years ago was approached by Don Tripp to help him because he said, I'm about 70, I'm not going to do this forever. I need somebody that might be interested in running for my position. And Gail said, well, I don't, because she was on the school board. Yeah, so we got started in 1987. I was working for a plumbing company, and the plumbing company I was working for, I had helped to grow it, and I would make commitments to customers. Then the owner would come in and change the schedule around for his friends, and I decided, if I'm going to look bad, I might as well just look bad on my own. I was actually pretty young. I was 22 years old. I had a 4-month-old baby when I went home and told my wife that I'd quit and started my own business. So I don't think that she was really pleased at that moment, but she trusted me, and we're still working at it. So that's how I started the business, and I was fortunate because I have an uncle, or had an uncle, that was CPA, and he helped teach me. He's an Anderson graduate. He helped teach me, and that was the best favor that anybody could have ever done, because I learned the number side, and then I knew the trade side, and I just slowly grew over the last 30 years. So it's been fun. Just keep innovating. You've got to stay out in front of technology, and I think it's growing people. I think when I started the business, I was in the plumbing business, and a few years later, I was in the people business, and that's what I've focused on, is the people side of the business, and then the community. My business is not here without the community, and I've taken an approach that we need to support the community and help the community, and we encourage our employees to get involved in the community, and it just creates a great culture, and it creates a great morale. So we just purchased a new facility for our headquarters, and we have extra room. So one of the things we're adding is a gym, which is really awesome. But we've kind of pulled the employees. We have 48% of our company is millennials, and one of the challenges they have is daycare. So we're exploring, can we put a daycare at TLC so that it takes that barrier away, or that out in front of them, so that their hours are our hours, and they know they're taken care of. So it's been pretty exciting. That's actually a very hard question. Positive aspects of owning the business. So making impacts on other people's lives, and I have the agility, because we're a small business, we can make decisions and we can move fast, and the world moves pretty fast, so we have to move fast, and that agility is good, and being able to support people is very good. It should remain a family business. I have some family members that are involved that I think are probably better than me, so if I'll get out of their way, I think it'll do well. We're trying to develop a model that will work in other cities. And so we've got 2 other cities we're working in now, Carlsbad and Santa Fe, and we think maybe this model works. It's a very simple model, but it's a culture-driven, values-driven model that I've seen airlines that it worked with, and it's working with our company, and so we think we can take it to other cities and bring things back to New Mexico instead of sending them out. I think it's awesome. I mean, every piece of education that a person can get, they're adding to their portfolio, because my life has just been chapter after chapter of new things that I learned. When it was just me at the company, it was a different thing, and then I grew to 20 people, and it was a whole different thing. And then when I grew to 70 people, now we have 500 people that are dependent on a team of us to make good decisions. And not every decision is good, but luckily we've had more good ones than bad ones. So.